according to NORML, National Organization to Reform Marijuana Law, that at least 98 people are arrested per hour in the United States, which is 5 times more than 40 years ago. Now, there has been a massive crackdown on the usage of marijuana, but this is something as simple as smoking a blunt. Something that's relatively harmless in comparison to something like murder or robbery. Now, I'm not a user of marijuana myself, but I support the legalization of marijuana. And that's mainly based on my experience with the people who did use marijuana. I've been to the 420 rally, which is a rally to legalize marijuana in Vancouver with my friends. And the people I saw there are not exactly the people that opponents claim to be. They are not hardened criminals. They are young people. They are shopkeepers. They are students. They are hipsters. They're basically people like you and me. And are they really the criminals that we should make them out to be? What if your family decides to have one puff of marijuana and they get arrested for something like that? Just an experiment. It'll ruin their life forever. Why would anyone want a law like this? I'm here to spread awareness about the usage of marijuana and the prohibition of it. And I'm here to argue that it should indeed be legalized. And the way I'm going to do so is through 3 points. 1, I'm going to be explaining why marijuana is relatively harmless. 2, I'm going to be explaining why the prohibition will not work and has not worked. In fact, it has already failed, for all we know. And 3, I'll talk about the economical benefits of legalizing marijuana, because down to it, money counts. The first thing I would be talking about is the harmlessness of marijuana. Now, according to Life Science, the reason why people usually want to take marijuana is either to relax or is to relieve pain. Now, the effects of marijuana are numerous. 1, it makes your eyes red. 2, it fastens your heartbeat. And 3, it increases your appetite. Mainly, it basically messes around with your senses and distorts it. I can pretty much testify to that because my roommate, who's a long-time user, will sometimes forget his car keys, like, often. According to procon.com, and you might want to be aware of this because some people ask, like, is there a big danger in marijuana? In fact, there isn't. According to procon.com, deaths by marijuana from 1997 to 2005 is only 279. That's less than 10 deaths per year. Now, how does that compare to something like alcohol, per se? Alcohol does the same thing as marijuana. It distorts sense, but how many people died because of marijuana? Because of marijuana versus alcohol. According to NBC News, which cites the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, people who died from alcohol are approximately about 75,000 Americans per year. Now, there's a whole level ahead of it than what marijuana would have. Okay, so why should marijuana get this treatment of being illegal while alcohol doesn't? I mean, clearly, alcohol is much more dangerous than marijuana. Well, the thing is, I believe they had prohibited alcohol before. In fact, they had prohibited it in the 1920s, and it failed. I mean, it failed. So, why would people go through prohibition? Why would people accept it? Well, proponents for it wants to make something like marijuana or alcohol legal because, one, they believe it'll boost the morals inside family households, increase their health, and it'll lower crime rate and violence. But, as history shows us, the prohibition in the U.S. against alcohol didn't exactly do that. In fact, it didn't stop people from drinking alcohol. It just drove it underground. People did not stop drinking. They just drank out of sight. They didn't stop buying alcohol. They buy it from the black market. They make it themselves. And when criminal enterprises see a market like that, they go for it. And what happens is you get a huge criminal enterprise that's focused mainly on alcohol. And people end up dying because they fight over the trade of alcohol. eventually, when they did repeal it, the criminal enterprise have no more market anymore. According to the World Drug Report, in 2011, about 24.1% of Americans use marijuana. That's not a lot, you might think. It's just a quarter. Well, get this. The Pew Research Center says that the increase in marijuana has drastically increased over the past decade, especially amongst young people. So essentially, the prohibition against marijuana has already failed. It didn't stop the use of marijuana. In fact, the use of marijuana just keeps growing and growing. Now, I already given you why the prohibition was harmful and useless. Now, I'll give you the benefits of legalizing marijuana. There are plenty of benefits to legalizing marijuana. In fact, we should probably take advantage of this because according to Think Progress, about 52% of Americans support the legalization of marijuana within the nation. According to Civil Liberty, the prohibition is very expensive, and it costs about $7.7 billion just to enact it. So think about how much money you'd save when we get rid of the enforcement of legalization of marijuana. Think about where the law enforcement could go, where they get combat other crimes. And not only can we let the law enforcement combat other crimes, we can also drastically lower crime through the legalization of marijuana. When people get arrested for the use of marijuana, they're thrown in jail, they're fined, and when they get out, what they find is because they now have a criminal record, they're unable to find jobs, they are unable to find housing, they're unable to make an honest living. So what some of them do is they resort to crime. Now, if we legalize that, it basically means less criminals are being made through it. It's just ironic that the criminalization of marijuana, in fact, just creates more criminals. We could just stop that. And one of the added benefits of legalizing marijuana is that we could tax it. We could tax the sale of marijuana. We can generate revenue on it and bring it back into the market. So, I think I gave you my 3 summaries of why marijuana should be legalized. 1, it is harmless. 2, the prohibition to stop it has failed. And 3, the prohibition has proved to be more harmful economically and socially. And if we stop it, we could focus law enforcement elsewhere. We could lower the creation of criminals, and we could also generate revenue off of the sales from marijuana. We could make a difference through the legalization in America. We could turn something that is unjust into just. Legalizing marijuana is not just, in fact, it is definition unjust, because what you're doing is harming the economy, the social fabrics of the USA. There's only one way to go about this, and that's to legalize it. Thank you.